My friends, if I may call you such, I come to you this evening not as a president, not as a figure carved in marble or printed in history books, but as a man who has lived through storms, both outside and within. I come to you as someone who has sat alone in dark rooms, who has felt the weight of sorrow press upon his chest, who has known worry that steals sleep and anger that burns hot and quick. I come to you as a fellow traveler on this long road of life, and I wish to speak with you about something I have learned, slowly and with great difficulty, over many years of living. There is a notion I have carried with me, a simple sentence that has guided me through some of my darkest hours. It is this: most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. Now, I know these words may sound too simple at first hearing. You might think, what does this man know of my troubles? What does he know of the aches in my bones, the loneliness of my evenings, the losses I have suffered? And you would be right to ask. But I ask you to stay with me a while, to sit by this fire of thought, and let me explain what I have come to understand about happiness, about the mind, about the quiet strength that lives within each of us, waiting to be called upon. Happiness, you see, is not something that arrives on our doorstep like a letter in the mail. It is not bestowed upon us by circumstance, though circumstance can certainly make our journey easier or harder. Happiness is a choice we make, moment by moment, day by day, in the privacy of our own hearts. It is a decision to see the light even when shadows are long. It is a practice, like tending a garden, of pulling the weeds of bitterness and planting the seeds of gratitude, of patience, of peace. I say this not to diminish your struggles, but to remind you of your power. For if happiness were only a matter of what happens to us, then we would be nothing more than leaves blown about by every wind. But we are more than that. We have within us the capacity to stand firm, to choose our response, to decide what we will carry and what we will set down. Let us speak plainly about the emotions that visit us all, the ones that arrive uninvited and make themselves at home in our hearts. Worry is one such visitor. It comes in the night, when the house is quiet and our minds begin to wander down dark paths. We worry about our health, about our children and grandchildren, about money, about all the things that might go wrong. Worry is a persistent companion, always whispering, always showing us shadows on the wall. I have known worry intimately. I have lain awake many nights, thinking of battles yet to be fought, of decisions that would affect thousands of lives, of sons who would not return home. Worry has a way of making the future seem darker than it ought to be, of stealing the peace from the present moment. And yet, I learned something about worry over time. I learned that worry is often nothing more than the mind's attempt to control what cannot be controlled. It is the heart's way of trying to prevent pain by imagining every possible danger. But in doing so, we suffer twice, once in imagination and once in reality, if the feared thing ever comes to pass. The remedy for worry, I have found, is not to push it away with force, but to meet it with calm. When worry rises, I have learned to pause, to breathe slowly, to ask myself, what can I do about this matter right now, in this moment? If there is something to be done, I do it. If there is nothing to be done, I practice the difficult art of letting it rest. I remind myself that tomorrow has enough troubles of its own, and today requires all my attention. Then there is anger, that hot flame that can rise so quickly in the chest. Anger comes when we feel we have been wronged, when life seems unfair, when people disappoint us or betray our trust. Anger has its place. It can alert us to injustice, can motivate us to right wrongs. But anger that is nursed and fed, anger that we hold on to day after day, becomes a poison. It does not harm the person we are angry with as much as it harms ourselves. It is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to fall ill. I have been angry in my life. I have felt the burn of it, the desire to lash out with words sharp as knives. I have written letters late at night, filled with all my fury, ready to send them off and let the recipient know exactly what I thought. But I learned a practice that saved me much regret. I would write those letters, pouring all my anger onto the page, and then I would set them aside. In the morning, with a clearer head, I would read them again. More often than not, I would burn them. The anger had been released in the writing, and with the dawn came a cooler wisdom that suggested a different path. Fear, too, is a constant in human life. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being forgotten. As we grow older, some of these fears become more present, more immediate. Our bodies change, our strength diminishes, friends and loved ones pass on, and we face the reality that our own time is limited. This is not a small thing. This is the great human condition, and it requires courage to face it honestly. But fear, like worry and anger, need not rule us. Fear can be acknowledged, respected even, but not obeyed. When I have felt afraid, truly afraid, I have found that the best response is to name it, to say to myself, I am afraid. This simple act of recognition takes away some of fear's power. Then I ask myself, what is the worst that could happen, and can I endure it? The answer, more often than we expect, is yes. Yes, I can endure it. I have endured much already, and I carry within me a strength I may have forgotten. Loneliness is perhaps the quietest of sorrows, but no less painful for its silence. In the later years of life, loneliness can become a familiar presence. Children have their own lives, old friends have departed, the world moves faster than we can follow, and we may find ourselves sitting alone more often than we once did. Loneliness aches in a way that is hard to describe to someone who has not felt it. I have sat alone in rooms filled with people, felt the loneliness of leadership, of carrying burdens that could not be shared. And I have learned that loneliness is not the same as being alone. One can be surrounded by people and feel desperately lonely. One can be alone and feel deeply connected to the world, to memory, to the great stream of human existence. The difference lies in how we hold ourselves in those moments. When loneliness visits, I have found comfort in simple things, in reading, in remembering, in walking outside and feeling the wind, in understanding that this feeling too shall pass. I have found that reaching out, even in small ways, sending a kind word to another, offering a smile to a stranger, can ease the loneliness in both directions. And then there is regret, that backward-looking sorrow. Regret for things said and unsaid, for chances not taken, for mistakes that cannot be undone. Regret can be a heavy burden, especially when we have many years behind us and can see clearly all the places where we stumbled. I have made mistakes, many of them. I have spoken when I should have been silent when I should have spoken. I have misjudged people and situations. I have hurt those I loved without meaning to. But I have learned that regret, while natural, must not become a prison. We cannot change the past. We can only learn from it and choose differently going forward. There is a kind of wisdom in accepting our imperfections, in forgiving ourselves as we would forgive a dear friend. To carry regret forever is to refuse the gift of the present moment, to say that our past mistakes define us more than our current choices. And that, I believe, is not true. Let me tell you something of my own journey, not to elevate myself, but to show you that these struggles I speak of are not abstract ideas. They are real and they are universal. There was a time in my life when darkness seemed to have settled permanently over my spirit. I was a young man, but I felt old with sorrow. I had lost someone dear to me, and the loss opened a wound that would not close. I went through my days mechanically, doing what needed to be done, but inside I felt hollow. Friends worried about me. They saw the light go out of my eyes. I worried about myself, wondered if I would ever feel joy again. In those dark months, I came to understand something important. I understood that I could not wait for happiness to find me. I could not sit in my sorrow and expect it to lift on its own. I had to make a choice, difficult as it was, to step toward the light, even if I could only take the smallest steps. I had to decide that I would not let grief consume me entirely, that I would find reasons, however small, to continue. I began with simple things. I forced myself to walk outside, to feel the sun on my face. I read books that lifted my spirit. I sought the company of friends, even when I wanted to be alone. I allowed myself to laugh when something struck me as funny, even though it felt strange at first, almost like a betrayal of my sorrow. And slowly, so slowly that I hardly noticed at first, the darkness began to lift. Not all at once, not completely, but enough that I could breathe again, enough that I could see a path forward. This experience taught me that we have more influence over our inner state than we often believe. We cannot always control what we feel in any given moment, but we can control what we do with those feelings. We can choose whether to feed them or starve them, whether to let them rule our actions or to act in spite of them. There was another time, years later, when I faced a decision that would affect countless lives. The weight of responsibility was crushing. I lay awake at night, turning the matter over and over in my mind, seeing all the possible outcomes, all the ways it could go wrong. I felt the pressure of history, the judgment of future generations, the immediate needs of the present moment. I felt paralyzed by the magnitude of it all. And then, in the midst of that paralysis, something shifted. I realized that I was not trusting myself, not trusting the process of careful thought and moral consideration I had been engaged in. I was letting fear and worry cloud what I knew in my heart to be right. So I made a decision to step back, to create some space between myself and the urgency I felt. I walked outside in the early morning before the city awoke. I felt the cool air, watched the sun rise slowly over the horizon, and in that quiet, in that pause, clarity came. The lesson I took from that moment was this: calm creates space for wisdom. When we are agitated, when our minds are churning with emotion, we cannot think clearly. We react instead of respond. We make choices based on fear or anger or desperation. But when we can find even a small measure of calm, when we can create a little distance between the stimulus and our response, wisdom has room to emerge. The answers we seek are often already within us, waiting quietly beneath the noise of our emotions. I learned to practice this pause deliberately. When faced with a difficult situation, instead of responding immediately, I would say to myself, "Let me consider this." I would take time, sometimes only a few minutes, sometimes a day or more, to let my initial emotional reaction settle. And almost always, the response that came from that place of calm was wiser, more measured, more true to my values than the one that would have burst forth in the heat of the moment. This practice served me well in matters both great and small, in disputes with colleagues, in moments of personal hurt, in the face of criticism and attack. I learned to pause. I learned that I did not have to defend myself immediately, did not have to answer every accusation, did not have to prove my worth to every critic. I could let things settle, could trust that truth has a way of emerging over time, could choose my battles carefully and fight them with calm purpose rather than hot emotion. Patience, I discovered, is not simply the ability to wait. It is the ability to keep a good attitude while waiting. It is the understanding that many things in life cannot be rushed, that there are seasons to all endeavors, that some seeds must be planted and tended for a long time before they bear fruit. This is a hard lesson, especially in moments of crisis when we want immediate resolution, immediate relief. But the great matters of life do not usually resolve quickly. They unfold in their own time, and our task is to remain steady, to do what we can, and to trust the process. I saw this in the great conflict that defined so much of my presidency. There were moments when it seemed the struggle would never end, when every step forward was met with 2 steps back, when the losses mounted and the hope dimmed. People wanted quick victory, wanted me to act more decisively, more harshly. And there were times I questioned myself, wondered if I was too slow, too cautious, too willing to wait. But I held to a deeper wisdom. I knew that lasting change could not be forced, that hearts and minds could not be commanded, that the nation needed not just military victory, but moral transformation. And that kind of transformation takes time. It requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to stay the course even when the destination seems impossibly far away. This patience was not passive. It was active, engaged, constantly working toward the goal while accepting that the goal could not be reached in a single leap. It was the patience of a farmer who plants in spring, tends through summer, and trusts that autumn will bring the harvest. It was the patience of one who understands that some things are worth waiting for, worth suffering for, worth persisting toward, even when the path is long and dark. Now let me speak more directly about this matter of the mind, about how our thoughts shape our experience, about why I say that most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. The mind is a powerful thing, more powerful than we often realize. It can take a small problem and magnify it until it seems insurmountable. It can take a single criticism and replay it endlessly until we begin to believe we are worthless. It can anticipate disaster so vividly that we suffer as though the disaster has already occurred. But the mind can also do the opposite. It can find beauty in simple things, can discover meaning in hardship, can generate gratitude in the midst of difficulty. The mind can be our greatest enemy or our greatest ally, and which it becomes depends largely on how we direct it. I'm not speaking here of false optimism, of pretending that hard things are easy or that pain does not hurt. I'm speaking of something deeper, more honest. I'm speaking of the choice to meet life as it is, with all its difficulties and sorrows, and to decide nonetheless that we will not be defeated by it. I am speaking of the courage to acknowledge suffering while refusing to identify ourselves entirely with that suffering. I am speaking of the wisdom to understand that this moment, however painful, is not the whole story of our lives. Consider how we speak to ourselves in the privacy of our own minds. Are we harsh critics, constantly finding fault, dwelling on every mistake, comparing ourselves unfavorably to others? Or are we kind companions to ourselves, offering encouragement, acknowledging our efforts, treating ourselves with the compassion we would extend to a friend? This inner voice, this running commentary we maintain with ourselves, shapes our experience profoundly. I have noticed that those who are habitually unhappy often have a habit of focusing on what is wrong, what is lacking, what is disappointing. Their minds naturally gravitate toward the negative, like water running downhill. They can be in a beautiful garden and notice only the weeds. They can receive 9 compliments and dwell on the one criticism. This is not a moral failing. It is simply a habit of mind, one that can be recognized and changed. Those who maintain a steadier happiness, even in difficult circumstances, seem to have cultivated a different habit. They notice what is good, what is working, what is worthy of appreciation. They do not ignore problems, but they do not inflate them beyond their actual size. They maintain a sense of proportion, a broader perspective that allows them to see the present difficulty in the context of their whole life. This shift in perspective is something we can practice. When we find ourselves dwelling on what troubles us, we can gently redirect our attention. We can ask ourselves, what is also true right now? What is going right, however small? What can I appreciate in this moment? This is not denial, it is balance. It is training the mind to see the whole picture rather than only the shadows. I have found that gratitude is one of the most powerful practices for cultivating this balance. Each day, if we take a moment to notice what we are grateful for, we begin to train our minds toward appreciation rather than complaint. It can be simple things: a warm cup of coffee, a kind word from a neighbor, the fact that we woke up to see another day. These small acknowledgements add up over time, creating a habit of noticing goodness, of recognizing that even in difficult lives, there are gifts. Forgiveness, too, is essential to a calm mind. I speak not only of forgiving others, though that is important, but also of forgiving ourselves. We all carry burdens of guilt, shame, regret. We all have done things we wish we had not done, failed to do things we wish we had done. If we cling to these failures, if we use them as evidence of our unworthiness, we create a prison for ourselves. But if we can acknowledge our mistakes, learn from them, and then release them, we free ourselves to move forward. Forgiving others is equally liberating. When we hold on to anger, resentment, the desire for revenge, we tie ourselves to the person who hurt us. We give them ongoing power over our peace of mind. They may have moved on, may not even remember the offense, while we continue to suffer. Forgiveness does not mean condoning wrong action or pretending we were not hurt. It means deciding that we will no longer let that hurt define us, that we will not give it ongoing power in our lives. I have had to forgive much in my life. I have been betrayed by those I trusted, attacked by those I tried to help, misunderstood by those whose opinion mattered to me. Each time, I faced a choice: to hold on to the hurt and let it harden into bitterness, or to release it and move forward. I cannot say I always chose forgiveness immediately or easily. but I came to understand that forgiveness was a gift I gave myself, a choice to put down a heavy burden I no longer wished to carry. The practice of calm, of choosing happiness, of directing the mind toward wisdom, is not something we master once and for all. It is a daily practice, sometimes a moment-by-moment practice. There are days when it feels impossible, when the weight is too heavy, when the darkness is too thick. On those days, we do what we can. We take one small step. We breathe. We remind ourselves that this, too, shall pass. We trust that the capacity for peace is still within us, even if we cannot feel it right now. Let me offer you some thoughts that might serve as guides, as practices you can take into your daily life. These are things I have learned through living, through trial and error, through watching others who seem to carry themselves with grace through difficulty. First, understand that you are not your emotions. Emotions are visitors. They come and go like weather. You can feel angry without being an angry person. You can feel sad without being defined by sadness. You can notice your emotions, acknowledge them, even honor them, without letting them dictate your actions. There is a space between feeling and action, and in that space lies your freedom, your power to choose. When a strong emotion arises, try this. Notice it. Name it. Say to yourself, I am feeling anger, or I am feeling fear, or I am feeling sad. This simple act of naming creates a small separation between you and the emotion. Reminds you that the emotion is something you are experiencing, not something you are. Then, before acting on the emotion, pause, take a few slow breaths. Ask yourself, how do I want to respond to this situation? What response would I be proud of tomorrow? What response aligns with who I want to be? This pause, this space of calm reflection, is where wisdom lives. It is available to you always, no matter how many times you have forgotten it, no matter how many times you have reacted without thinking. Each moment offers a fresh opportunity to practice this pause, to choose your response rather than being carried away by emotion. Second, cultivate simplicity in your life. As we grow older, we often accumulate not just possessions, but also obligations, worries, regrets, old resentments. We carry so much, and it weighs us down. There is great freedom in letting go of what is no longer necessary. Ask yourself, what am I carrying that I no longer need to carry? What old anger can I release? What worry about things I cannot control can I set down? What pursuit of perfection can I abandon in favor of simple contentment? Simplicity also means focusing on what truly matters. At the end of our lives, we will not remember most of the things we worried about. We will remember moments of connection, of love, of beauty, of meaning. We will remember not what we accumulated, but how we lived, how we treated others, how we met the challenges that came our way. Keeping this perspective helps us prioritize, helps us let go of the trivial and hold on to the essential. Third, remain connected to others. Loneliness is one of the great sorrows of age, but it need not be inevitable. Even when it is difficult, even when we feel we have nothing to offer, reaching out to others brings life. A conversation, even a brief one, reminds us that we are part of a larger human community. A shared laugh, a moment of understanding, a small act of kindness given or received, these things nourish us. And do not think you have nothing to give because you are older, because you are not as strong or active as you once were. You have something precious to give, your experience, your wisdom, your perspective. The young need what you know, even if they do not yet realize it. They need to hear that difficulties can be survived, that losses can be endured, that long lives can be lived with dignity and meaning. Your presence, your story, your example, these are gifts. Fourth, find ways to quiet your mind regularly. In our modern world, there is so much noise, so much stimulation, so much demand for our attention. The mind needs rest, needs silence, needs space to simply be without constantly doing. This might mean sitting quietly for a few minutes each day, simply breathing and letting your thoughts settle. It might mean walking in nature, letting the rhythm of your steps and the beauty around you calm your spirit. It might mean reading something that uplifts you, that reminds you of what is good and true. Prayer or meditation, whatever form speaks to you, can be a powerful practice. I am not speaking of complex techniques or rigid rules. I am speaking of the simple act of turning inward, of connecting with something larger than yourself, of resting in a peace that is always available beneath the surface of daily concerns. This practice does not eliminate difficulties, but it provides an anchor, a place of stability in the midst of change. Fifth, take care of your body as you are able. The body and mind are not separate. They influence each other constantly. When we are physically depleted, everything seems harder. Simple things like adequate sleep, nourishing food, gentle movement, time outside in fresh air, these basic acts of self-care support our emotional and mental well-being. I know that as we age, the body does not always cooperate, that pain and limitation become familiar companions. But within whatever limitations you face, do what you can to care for yourself with kindness. Sixth, engage with beauty. Beauty is a balm for the soul, and it is available everywhere if we train ourselves to see it. A sunrise, a bird's song, a child's laughter, a well-crafted sentence, a melody that moves us. These moments of beauty remind us that the world is more than suffering and struggle. They remind us that there is goodness, that there is grace, that there is something worth celebrating even in ordinary days. Make a practice of noticing beauty. Let yourself stop and really see it, really take it in. Let it fill you, even if only for a moment. These moments accumulate, create a reservoir of goodness that we can draw on when times are hard. Seventh, be patient with yourself. You will not master these practices overnight. You will forget them, will fall back into old patterns, will have days when you feel you have learned nothing. This is normal. This is human. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. What matters is that you keep trying, that you keep choosing, that you keep directing yourself gently and kindly back toward the path of calm and wisdom. Speak to yourself as you would speak to someone you deeply love who is struggling. Be encouraging, not critical. Be understanding, not harsh. Recognize that you are doing the best you can with the resources you have in each moment. Some moments your best will be quite good. Other moments it will be merely surviving, and that is enough. You are enough. As I come toward the close of these reflections, I want to return to where we began, to that simple statement that has guided me. Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. I hope you can see now that this is not a superficial optimism, not a denial of suffering, not a suggestion that happiness is easy or that we can simply wish our troubles away. It is something deeper and more true. It is the recognition that within us, within each of us, there is a place of strength, of choice, of dignity that cannot be taken away by circumstances. Life will bring what it brings. We will face loss and disappointment, pain and sorrow. We will grow old if we are fortunate, and with age comes its own set of challenges. But we retain always the capacity to choose our relationship to these experiences. We can let them embitter us or let them deepen us. We can let them close our hearts or let them open our hearts to greater compassion. We can let them make us small or let them reveal our true size. Happiness, I have learned, is not the absence of difficulty. It is the presence of peace in the midst of difficulty. It is not getting everything we want, but appreciating what we have. It is not a life free from pain, but a heart that remains tender and open despite pain. It is the quiet satisfaction of having lived according to our values, of having tried our best, of having maintained our humanity through it all. When I look back on my life, the moments I remember most fondly are not the ones of triumph or acclaim. They are the quiet moments. A shared laugh with a friend, a walk on a spring morning, a moment of understanding between myself and another person, a time when I faced my fear and found courage I did not know I had. These are the things that made my life rich, that made it meaningful. And I believe the same is true for you. Your life, with all its ordinary moments, with all its struggles and joys, is precious. It is unique. It is your own. And you have the power to meet it with grace, with courage, with a calm mind that creates wisdom. As you move through your days, remember this: you are stronger than you think. You have survived every difficulty you have faced so far, and that itself is proof of your resilience. You carry within you the wisdom of experience, the depth of feeling, the capacity for joy and for peace. These are not small things. These are the treasures of a life lived. Be gentle with yourself and with others. Be patient with the pace of things, knowing that all things unfold in their season. Be willing to let go of what no longer serves you. Be open to the small moments of grace that appear each day, often in unexpected forms. Be grateful for the gift of life, even when it is difficult, even when it is not what you hoped it would be. And remember that happiness is not something you find out there in the world, waiting for circumstances to align. It is something you cultivate within, moment by moment, choice by choice. It is a practice, a discipline, a gentle turning of the mind toward light. Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. This is both a challenge and an invitation. It is a challenge to take responsibility for our inner state, to recognize our power and use it wisely. And it is an invitation to freedom, to the understanding that no matter what comes, we retain the capacity to choose peace, to choose gratitude, to choose love. I have tried in my own imperfect way to live by this understanding. I have not always succeeded. There have been days of darkness, days when I could not find my way to calm, days when I felt defeated by life. But I kept trying. I kept choosing. And in the end, I found that the practice itself was the point. Not perfection, but persistence. Not constant happiness, but the constant choice to turn toward happiness when I could. My dear friends, whatever you are facing, whatever burden you carry, whatever sorrow sits with you in the quiet hours, know that you are not alone. Every human being who has ever lived has faced their own version of these struggles. We are united in our humanity, in our vulnerability, in our need for comfort and for hope. And know, too, that you have everything you need within you to meet what comes. You have a mind that can choose calm. You have a heart that can choose forgiveness. You have a spirit that can choose resilience. These are not small powers. These are the greatest powers we possess. So make up your mind to be as happy as you can be, not by denying what is difficult, but by choosing to see what is good. Not by avoiding pain, but by meeting it with courage. Not by pretending you have no fears, but by acknowledging them and acting bravely anyway. Not by holding on to anger, but by releasing it and choosing peace. Not by regretting the past, but by learning from it and living fully in the present. This is the wisdom of a calm mind. This is the strength of a patient heart. This is the gift you can give yourself each day for all the days you have remaining. May you find your peace. May you know your worth. May you carry yourself through this world with dignity and grace. And may you remember, when the days are hard, that you have the power to choose, and that choice is enough. Thank you for walking this road with me, for listening to the reflections of an old man who has learned slowly and with difficulty what it means to live. I leave you with this final thought. The storms will come as they always have and always will. But morning follows every dark night, and within you is a light that no storm can extinguish. Trust that light. Tend it carefully. Let it guide you home.